have a mansion. In the post-apocalyptic world by Morningstar LL. Chapter 111, Another Use of Interdimensional Travel. Her heartbeats resumed. Seems like I was dead for a while. But how did I survive? There was no time for Sun Jiao to think, however. In her murky vision, she saw the mutated human walking towards Jiang Chen. Her vision was covered by dark blood, the entire front of her armor had caved in tight against her chest, and her left arm was out of commission from the broken plastic steel armor lacerating her flesh. The exposed wiring flashed with unsettling sparks, and on her pupils was a daunting list of red alerts. She would most likely have to cut off the entire left arm of the suit to extricate her broken left hand, but the ability should be able to heal it. Sun Jiao panted, her clouded eyes half open as she tried to lock her aim onto the head of the mutated human. Its heart and head were the only weaknesses. Boom! The 72mm anti-tank cannon in her right hand fired, the cannon whipping upwards. The trail of orange flame directly homed in on the mutated human that was about to execute Jiang Chen. Made it? Seems to be off. Seeing it miss the weak spots, Sun Jiao raised her already straining right hand and aimed the cannon at the mutated human struggling to stand. She pulled the trigger. Clank. A bitter smile appeared on her face. The clip was empty. She glanced at her trapped left hand. A liquid, perhaps cold sweat, rolled down her blood-covered face. It was pointless if it didn't hit the head or the heart. Even with a broken left hand and half a stomach, it wouldn't die. It was not an average mutated human, it was a variant with lead skin. These mutated humans received special modifications that made their skin into lead. Not only did it make their defense far superior to the average mutated humans, but their strength and life force also far exceeded normal limits. Their only weakness was the lead-addled brain. They would kill instinctively, and so they were often used like dogs by the same species. The clip was at her waist, but how could she change it out with one hand? Damn it! Jiang Chen. Sun Jiao anxiously stared at Jiang Chen, her lips turning pale from biting it so harshly. At that moment, she could see the faint Jiang Chen looking in her direction. She is still alive. Terrific. Jiang Chen's lips slightly trembled, feeling emotional. It was as if his heart was full again. Fury deactivated? No, it's not fury. Whatever, who cares? Jiang Chen turned his head to look at the mutated human struggling to stand. He met the ferocious stare. The flesh was healing at an unimaginable rate. The lead skin covering the head and chest had already grown back. Its threatening smile seemed to mock Jiang Chen. The mutated human could already sense that the man in front of him had no more tricks to play. Jiang Chen looked down at the pistol in his hand. Even the tactical rifle on the power armor could not penetrate its skin. The 11 tactical pistol would be futile as well. Out of tricks? No. There was still a lethal trick he hadn't used yet. Roar. The mutated human growled as he watched Jiang Chen approach. For no reason at all, he felt anxious. The head and heart were already covered by the newly grown lead skin, but when he saw the man walking towards him, he felt an instinctive fear. Jiang Chen drew closer to the mutated human and cracked a smile. Placing the gun in his pocket, he retrieved a crystal from the storage dimension. After the interdimensional bracelet's energy was charged to full, he flung the now lustreless crystal away. He leisurely squatted down, staring into the bell-sized eyeballs, then took a deep breath and smiled lightheartedly. Should I take you to play in another world? He slapped his hand on the mutated human's shoulder. Upon finishing his sentence, both of them disappeared from Sun Jiao's sight. Interdimensional travel? Sun Jiao stared blankly at the place Jiang Chen and the mutated human had disappeared from. She remembered the dead hamster, living creatures were unable to travel with him. But she also faintly remembered that he mentioned it took 40% energy to travel once. What would happen now that he brought along the mutated human? She felt unsettled. The homing engine turbine began to ring from afar. Power-armored soldiers were rushing to the scene. They'd been caught in a crossfire with the remaining mutated humans. As soon as they solved the problem, they quickly rushed over. Where did the light infantry go? Sun Jiao asked in the communication channel. Still at the gate. Good. Get me out first. If someone saw the scene, she would have to shut them up, eternally. She was different from Jiang Chen, she didn't feel much guilt when killing. The power-armored soldiers walked forward, took out a welding gun, and cut through the caved-in metal on her left arm. Sun Jiao gritted her teeth as she crawled out from the back of the power armor, then looked at where Jiang Chen had disappeared. She began to feel more and more anxious, her uncertainty creeping into her face. Why is he still not back? Captain, what do we do now? Stay put and set up camp. 01, go take a tent from the armored truck and cover that area. Sun Jiao pointed at where Jiang Chen had last been seen. Understood. The power-armored soldier with the 01 symbol on his left arm received the order and left. The rest of you establish the temporary camp in the main building. We might need to stay here for a few days, she added after a pause. Understood. She stared at the empty spot again as she bit her lips and clenched her fists. It was already the third day. Seeing that they were victorious, the surrounding team headed back, but some still remained, for example, Zhao Gang. No, my wife is still underground. Zhao Gang could not wait any longer as he slapped his leg and stood facing the direction of the main building. The scared Ma Zhongchen immediately grabbed onto him. Are you crazy? Do you not see how she looks right now? Ma Zhongchen discreetly pointed at the figure sitting in front of the tent. The lifeless eyes were covered with permafrost. The lonely figure sat there quietly wiping the gun. It was not the look of someone who was open to conversation. Zhao Gang clenched his teeth but finally sat down hesitantly. But, just wait for a bit longer, brother, I'll be with you. Don't worry, as long as the people are here, she'll release them. They have some small internal situation, Ma Zhongchen desperately tried to tell his outspoken comrade. Instinct told him that if they were to anger her now, something bad would happen. It was not a small situation. 3 days already passed. For 3 days now, Sun Jiao sat in front of the tent. She silent wiped the SK-10 laser rifle in her hand. She hadn't used it in a long time, but she always kept it with her. She opened the EP, looking perplexedly at the hidden genetic code. Revive, repair critical organs, leave death state. Ability requirement, triggers when the heart stops beating, and organ damage is below 50%. This godsend ability saved her, probably reviving her when she died. But at this moment, she did not feel the slightest happiness. She sighed and closed the EP. The temperature difference on the wasteland was quite drastic. There was already a hint of chill in the wind. But even with only a light combat suit on her, she did not have any sense of temperature. How was Jiang Chen doing? She didn't know. What she did know was that if he were okay, he would come back immediately. But now, she uncontrollably clenched her fist, feeling the sudden moisture in her eyes. Damn it. That fist feebly smashed onto the cold, hard concrete road. Chapter 112, Overload. There was an excruciating pain, as if his body was being ripped apart. The burning sensation of the tattoo on his right wrist was especially unbearable. Thank God, he lost his consciousness not long after. Or else the pain would have actually driven him insane. He didn't know how long after the incident it was, but the soreness of his entire body returned. URG. Struggling, he finally opened his drowsy eyes. The first image he saw was a gorgeous face in tears. You are finally awake. Aisha leaped from in front of the bed. Her lips trembled, and the mists in her eyes shook, ready to fall at any time. How long have I been sleeping? Jiang Chen asked weakly. An entire day and night. Her face had concern written all over it. He felt guilty looking at the heavy eye bags on her face. Wait. Where'd the mutated human go? As if a bucket of cold water had just poured onto his head, Jiang Chen scrambled looking around, but he couldn't find the mutated human's body. Aisha, did you see that body? I hid it in the basement. Aisha lowered her head, lightly biting into her lips. She broke her promise with Jiang Chen. He had previously told her to never come into the room under any circumstances, but the loud noise from the room had woken her up. She anxiously approached the room only to hear Jiang Chen's painful screams. She didn't waste a second to think before dashing into the kitchen, grabbing a knife, and shoving the bedroom door open. The next moment, she saw Jiang Chen, who lay in bed unconscious, and a disfigured monster. Never had she seen a more frightening monster. Its body was covered with severed flesh. The head and heart were covered in a pitch-black metal. Is this thing even human? Suppressing the fear in her heart, she approached the monster and placed her hand over its chest. There were no heartbeats. She gazed at the unconscious Jiang Chen and then at the monster that had fallen to the ground. She could tell that the two must have had some conflict. Although she didn't understand the absurd scene, she would always stand on her husband's side. Putting down the knife, Aisha forced down the agitated contents of her stomach with a deep breath before dragging the body into the mansion's basement. She then took disinfectant from the bathroom and cleaned the blood trail, careful as though covering up a crime scene. After taking care of everything, she filled a bowl with water and stripped Jiang Chen to wipe down his entire body. She couldn't fathom how he had become like this in just one afternoon. At least the still beating heart somewhat reassured her. Only after she finished did she bring a chair from the living room to sit beside his bed quietly, waiting for him to wake up. Did you see everything? Jiang Chen asked with a bitter smile. Seeing such a caring face, he could never blame her for coming in. Aisha nodded, then buried her head. I am willing to give up my life for you if you wish. He lifted his hand and covered her mouth. Jiang Chen smiled at her surprised look. I am not a devil, you don't need to give up your life. Just keep the secret for me. It was okay if she knew, Aisha would never leak the secret. With both hands outreached, Aisha covered the large hand covering her face. She gently nodded. Uh-huh. He craned his head to look at the light in the distance. It was almost dawn. Go sleep for a little bit. I won't be alone to think. Aisha nodded with a worried look at Jiang Chen. She then left the room and closed the already broken door. Lying on the soft bed, Jiang Chen raised his right hand. All of the energy in the interdimensional bracelet was gone? He glanced at the bed lamp. After reaching over to unplug it, he stuck his finger into the socket. The light bulb in the room slightly dimmed, but due to the voltage limit, he only managed to charge the interdimensional bracelet by 2%. He breathed deeply and concentrated on his right hand in an attempt to open the storage dimension. Pain radiated from his wrist. The energy wasn't consumed, so I guess that means I can't use it for now. Jiang Chen looked at his right hand thoughtfully. He'd been pondering this issue for a while now. If he forcefully grabbed someone to travel with him, then wouldn't it eradicate that person in an instant? But he never had the opportunity to test this bugged ability out since in the era of firearms, bullets served the purpose better. There was another area of consideration, however. If he spent 40% of the energy traveling, then how much energy would it cost to bring along another person? The cost of taking someone alive should be different from taking a corpse. He recalled the last time carrying the hamster, it hadn't cost an excessive amount of energy. But this time with the lead skin mutated human, it completely drained the interdimensional bracelet. No, the real energy cost definitely far exceeded the 60% limit, which was what caused him to go unconscious. No need to use it against weak enemies, too costly against strong enemies. A bit useless in battles. He rubbed his fingers, which were no longer sore, and stared at the interdimensional bracelet on his skin. He desperately wanted to go back. Sun Jiao must be worried about him. But the bracelet was most likely overheated. Seeing as how it could charge, however, it meant it wasn't broken. Maybe it would return to normal after some time? Realizing that there was no use worrying, Jiang Chen shook his head and grabbed the EP from the table where it lay after Aisha had taken it off while wiping down his body. Username, Jiang Chen. Body conditions. Muscle strength, 30. Bone strength, 29. Reflex, 32. Brain cell strength, 14. Radiation level, 0 safe. Irregular status, none. Muscle strength had increased by 5 points, bone strength by 2, reflex increased by 3, and the genetic potential was further developed. On Earth, this body condition would easily destroy superheroes like Spider-Man and Batman. If they existed anyway. Jiang Chen remembered the Sun Jiao had told him before that once injected with the genetic vaccine, the genetic potential would be somewhat unleashed. But to evolve to a stronger form, it could only be accomplished through life and death situations. That battle truly had been dancing on a knife's edge between life and death. He recollected that battle with a forced smile. A power armor, worth over 10,000 crystals, exploded. But what made his heart ache the most was not the crystals but the fact that it was difficult to buy even with crystals. To help him, Zhao Chengwu had sold him all of his remaining units. Right. Speaking of the battle, that time, Jiang Chen suddenly remembered that after Sun Jiao had been thrust away by the power warhammer, the heart ceased symbol had shown up on the team status, spurring him into a state similar to fury. He opened the special ability tab in EP. Hidden genetic code. Muscle strength plus 35, reflex plus 40, brain cell strength plus 29. Special effect, battle instinct. Can grasp the situation and the enemy's ability in disadvantaged situations, ignore all unnecessary factors, and use previous battle actions to instantly carry them out at the maximum success rate. Side effect, emotionless. Time of duration, until the opponent dies or a trigger is used to cease the effects. After 30 minutes, it will begin to drain life force, and the effect will be reflected in the body afterwards. Note, once activated, Fury is forcefully deactivated. It was not Fury, but a new ability. Jiang Chen gulped at the skill description. Did the 3 question marks mean that the ability had yet to be named? This meant that nobody had activated this genetic code before? After pausing to think, he pressed the 3 question marks, opening up a dialog box on the screen. This means that it can be named? He pondered for a while. He really didn't have any talent in coming up with names. Suddenly, Jiang Chen slapped his head as if enlightened before typing in Invictus. Hee. Invictus had the connotation of putting in a cheat code. The ability did seem unfair. After typing in the name of the ability, Jiang Chen read over the description again. Based on previous battle actions, that meant that if he had ever used a gun in the past, then he would become Hawkeye. And he had trained in all functions of the power armor before, so he can fluidly control the power armor without any hindrances. Jiang Chen mentally went over the battle. The combos he made had been perfect. Such mastery was definitely not something he could normally do, especially when he still had to look at the speed monitor when accelerating. The fuel rod self-destruction program was also an action he had used before. But why had he never thought about using the interdimensional bracelet to eliminate opponents before? He thought deeply before coming to a sudden realization. That was because he had never used traveling as a combat action. After experimenting with the hamster, he had never performed it during combat. Therefore, the ability's effect achieves skill mastery, Jiang Chen said with a troubled smile after peering at his hand. Using the interdimensional travel ability to kill should not be a problem, but it would be pushing the limits if used against a monster with a high life force. A mutated human had made him unconscious for an entire day, and he still could not use his bracelet. If he traveled with a Roshan or a Deathclaw. Some experiments indicated that his life force was proportional to crystal energy. He shook his head and put the EP aside, closing his eyes to rest. Sun Jiao was still alive. Her revive must have evolved from her tenacious ability. This must be how hidden genetic codes could be further unlocked. Speaking of this, as long as they used their ability, they had to bear the side effects from it. Fury made him lose consciousness, Invictus removed emotion, then what was the side effect of the next hidden genetic code? For some reason, he felt slightly uneasy. Genetic vaccines had eliminated the barriers that constrained DNA, allowing humans to unleash abilities previously sealed. But was this really alright? If eliminating barriers was a good thing, then why was there one in the first place when humans first began to evolve? Only time could tell. And it was stupid to worry about an ability being too powerful. Chapter 113, Perhaps I Should Buy an Island. Jiang Chen was lying on a chair beside the swimming pool, enjoying the last rays of the summer afternoon. Although he was eager to return to the other side to tell Sun Jiao that he was safe, the interdimensional bracelet was on cooldown. There was nothing he could do about it, so he rested. The weather was becoming chillier, and it wouldn't be long before fall arrived. Thinking about it now, it had to be close to wintertime in the apocalypse. Because of the radiation dust, winter in the apocalypse world came earlier than it did in the modern world. Going by what Sun Jiao said, usually by mid-October, winter would come to Wanghai City, and it would rightly be called a nightmare. In 1 month's time, the temperatures would drastically drop to sub-zero with unnatural snow coating the city in an unhealthy white. Despite this, compared to the first few years, it was getting better. Based on documentations, during the initial years after the nuclear war, the entire world remained frozen in a state of nuclear winter. Only winter, no summer. During that time, the mutants chose to hibernate or migrate to warmer areas such as abandoned nuclear facilities or geothermal wells. The only ones unaffected by the harsh temperatures were zombies. Their bodies did not possess enough water to be frozen, but due to the reduced sunlight, their sleep times were also lengthened. Jiang Chen was deep in thought as he stared at the chilled orange juice placed on the table. It was necessary to have enough food, clothing, and fuel for the winter, but these were not difficult for him to procure. The coming season would not be too bad for the fishbone base. There was obviously enough food, and winter clothing more effective than down clothes were sold in 6th Street. Fuel could be substituted by electricity, but overall, the levels of power generated and consumed would decrease in the winter since with the outside temperature already at sub-zero, the fridge system in the basement could be shut down. What worried him most was the combat power of the base. From what he gathered during the battle with the mutated humans, the weakness of the fishbone base was finally exposed. Ample money, but still too weak. With their power armors, they could steamroll through most survivor groups, but if they wished to expand, their opponents were not limited to small groups. Wanghai City had so many forces to begin with, what about outside of the city? In the country? And what about the unknown mutants? If they didn't have the support of heavy weaponry, they would instantly be at a disadvantage upon encountering a military force of mutated humans. Even more detrimental was the fact that there was no way to replace power armors. This time, 4 of them had been busted while the remaining were damaged. Despite eliminating the mutated humans, in the end, it was a terrible trade for Fishbone Base. He did not expect a group of mutated humans to appear out of nowhere. After realizing the Huizhong mercenaries were in trouble, he had been ready to take advantage of the situation. But upon finishing off the mercenary group, the new opponents were not friendly and immediately opened fire. From the start, there had been no chance of a peaceful resolution between normal humans and mutated humans. He grasped the glass of juice and chewed on the straw, deliberating as he gazed at Aisha's body floating in the water. They lacked heavy weapons. Fishbone Base was too dependent on 6th Street, who was likely unwilling to sell heavy weaponry to them. At most, they would offer a heavy machine gun or rocket launcher. The only reason they sold them the high-energy vacuum bombs was because they were ineffective in most situations, useless against zombies and easily intercepted by laser weapons. These items were limited to begin with since the production facilities were all but destroyed during the war. Weapons like tactical nukes and concentrated laser bombs were all raided from battlefields and half-destroyed military warehouses. Typically, possessing these sort of superweapons reflected the force of a survival camp. While it was important for Fishbone Base to possess its own firearm production line, they had to also think of ways to develop heavy weaponry. What gave Jiang Chen a headache was that he possessed the technology but not the production capability. Excluding production equipment, the two limiting factors to Fishbone Base's growth were raw materials and population size. Mining was impractical in the apocalypse. All of the sources near the surface were emptied. The major mining hubs on small subplanets and moons had been blown into debris. And though they did purchase some construction materials from 6th Street, after this crusade, their own production supplies would have become scarce, so who would be willing to sell to him? If he wanted to develop the industry, he had to improve waste recycling first. Because of the rapid advancement in material science, refining matter with page-long names was no mean feat. Jiang Chen knew little about the subject, but he did hear from Zhao Chenwu that 35% of 6th Street's industrial production was based on waste recycling, because although organic materials could solve some needs, bullets, bombs, and armors all depended on metal. As for the matter of population, even if they didn't have a complete production line, if they modified some equipment, they could partially create it by hand. This, however, required an excessive amount of labor. The spider tank, for example, required tens of thousands of parts to be assembled. And to use the small population of Fishbone Base to develop military tech. Zhao Chenwu's military factory alone had more workers. Could he produce some of the less complex parts in the modern world before moving them to the apocalypse? They had plenty of mining resources, and even if they didn't have the best skills, he could at least acquire some simple production equipment. Think about it, Jiang Chen wryly smiled and shook his head to give up on the idea. It was too dangerous. It was not practical in this country. Even if the workers didn't understand the purpose behind the spare parts, a factory without a stated purpose would very soon catch someone's attention. And if anyone happened to find out that he possessed military technology, the scenario was simply too beautiful to imagine. Perhaps overseas? Except Jiang Chen was of the mind that all crows in the world were of the same color. If they chose to follow their constitutions and laws, there was a chance that the country would not take action. But if it involved a giant of the military technology field, a massive conglomerate that came into prominence after World War II, they would not pass this opportunity. At this time, the country was willing to keep one eye open, but that was only until the military technology was on the brink of falling into the hands of their people. It was such a waste if he could not utilize the rich resources of the modern world. At that moment, Aisha burst from the water. Shaking her wet hair, she cast a pleasant smile in Jiang Chen's direction. Instantly, his eyes light up. "URG, it was not because of that island. Fu *K, why didn't I think of it before?" Jiang Chen slapped his head with a humorless smile. The only thing the apocalypse lacked was food, but in this world, it could be obtained almost anywhere. And if work was hard to do domestically, then the situation would be different on a small, developing island. If he could simultaneously have a base in the modern world, it would greatly benefit the development in the apocalypse. There was no need to worry about resources and labor in the modern world so long as he could control a small neutral country far from international regulations. His heart began to pump at the thought. For a long time now, he had been searching for an option to fall back on. This was after he had introduced Future 1.0 and was asked to have a chat with the person whom he had saved. Of course, he could say this only in his mind, but once he came out from the Wang family's home, he had the intention of leaving. But the exact details had to be planned out. He stood up from the chair and began walking towards the mansion. Aisha swam to the side of the pool, seductive water droplets hanging on to her dark brown, curly hair. Her tender white arms leaned against the poolside. The look in her eyes asked, "Don't you want to sleep together?" Jiang Chen gulped uncontrollably as he took in the charm that she herself didn't know she exuded. This girl was becoming more and more attractive by the day. Her white skin was partially due to race, but also partially due to the nutrients in the training chamber. Thanks to it, the grease and the dirt under her skin had been washed away, and the natural pores of the Caucasian race contracted. After days of care, Aisha's previously stiff skin became as smooth as jade. It was no exaggeration that if Jiang Chen used the nutrient to open a cosmetic center, he would earn overwhelming profits. Not only that, but because of the genetic vaccine and the daily workouts, traces of abs began to show. With her perfect legs, the exotic charm became more and more seductive by the day. But what intoxicated him most was the gaze full of love. This bikini-clad, attractive figure flourished only for one person. Jiang Chen had the urge to jump into the water and play with her. But he still had many things to do, and those sorts of actions could be done later at night. Compared to before, he was much better at controlling his desires. Ahem, why don't you play by yourself? I have some things to care of. Suppressing his desire, Jiang Chen awkwardly smiled and hastily left the pool area. Mansion basement. Jiang Chen observed the mutated human's body. Taking a deep breath, he extended his right hand. The storage dimension could not keep living creatures, he had tried it before. Ants could be stored, but not cockroaches, only to be instantly killed. It seemed it would be impractical to kill people using the storage dimension. It did not cost much energy to store corpses in the dimension, and the energy bar had been charged to 10%. Jiang Chen tensed at the slight pain radiating from his wrist. Fu*K, don't you break on me. When there was still no reaction, Jiang Chen began to sweat profusely. After a short delay, the mutated human twitched and disappeared into the storage dimension. He let out a long, relieved sigh and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He glanced at his right wrist. It had cost 5% energy. He then used the remaining energy to remove crystals from the storage dimension before charging the interdimensional bracelet's energy to max capacity. It seemed that function had already recovered. Next was interdimensional travel. Jiang Chen initiated the ability. But soon, his excitement was killed by the pain in his wrist. The storage function had recovered, but the travel ability did not. Too soon? He looked at his right hand, unable to do anything. But since the storage function had recovered, the travel ability should follow soon after. After taking care of the body, Jiang Chen went to the third-floor office and booted up his computer. He had to prepare his plan to purchase an island. Opening up Baidu Wiki and Google Earth, his eyes searched the Pacific Rim region. It didn't have to be too big. Even if he ran out of land later, the apocalypse world had the technology to create artificial land masses. Only, the ocean was more frightening than land, so the technology was not well known among survivors. There was also no need for many people as it would be easier to control. If later he needed more, he could simply bring some in. An unstable political situation, but not too chaotic. The lower the GDP, the better. The poorer they were, the easier it would be to purchase the land. He would have to invest in it regardless. Ideally, they wouldn't have a dispute with neighboring countries over annoying things like natural gas or oil. He would eliminate those materials at any time. He didn't need them to make a living, and it would be troublesome to guard against thieves when developing in seclusion. Another important factor was that it had to be away from the 5 thugs. Likely referring to the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Finally, he found a small country located on Panu Island. It almost seemed made for him. A smile on his face, Jiang Chen called Robert's number. Hello? My old friend, you finally remember your unlucky friend. Robert's glib tongue was in action on the other side of the phone. I've been busy lately. Would you like to cut a deal? Jiang Chen didn't bother with chit-chat and cut straight to the topic. Chapter 114, Play a Bad Guy for Me. There was a palpable pause on the other side, followed by a fake laugh. I'm no longer in the business, you know. I'm also on probation, so your words. That Lawrence guy will probably come to have a chat with me in a bit, too. Hearing Robert's downtrodden voice, Jiang Chen stopped and almost couldn't restrain his laughter. The guy must not be having the best time right now. By probationary period, he probably meant that the FBA was monitoring his phone after telling him to his face, I'm watching you right now. Showing off despite your current state, and you even said that you would have me covered when I head to Los Santos. He smiled but inwardly cursed. Jiang Chen shook his head and got ready to end the call. Okay, looks like you can't do this deal then. I'm going to hang up. No, wait. The call disconnected, but his cell phone rang shortly after. He picked up, mocking, you switched numbers? Hee hee, other than the fact that the phone bill is a bit more expensive, this number is pretty convenient. Ahem, what business do you have? I heard you say you're a producer now, but from your tone of voice, it seems you haven't had the best time. Jiang Chen asked jokingly. He remembered that the gold deal had been worth around $500 million. With a 9% commission, minus the loan and other costs, he should have at least 10 million or more. Ran out of money already? It was in USD, too. URG, ahem, it takes longer for a movie to return the investment, you know. Robert forced a laugh. Did you spend all that money on tail over there in Hollywood? Jiang Chen chuckled. This pervert. There are definitely better ways to spend the money. But as that thought crossed his mind, his expression turned sour. He felt those same words applied to him as well. Ahem, let's talk about business. Robert awkwardly laughed from the other side of the call. Jiang Chen didn't continue to make fun of him as he adopted a more serious tone. You've always worked in sensitive areas, so you must be close to mercenaries? Oh? Do you want to hire mercenaries? But in Hua. Not in Hua, Jiang Chen interrupted. I need your help hiring a group of people to train bodyguards for me. Bodyguards? Robert paused for a moment. In that case, Blackwater International is not bad. Not Blackwater. Jiang Chen refused right away. You said before, they're too close to the FBA. He finally managed to leave a circle of influence. There was no way he was entering another one. Hee, I knew it, you must be thinking of some bad things. Robert's ridiculing voice passed through the phone. He continued, all of the mercenaries in the UA are all somewhat associated with the White House. If you want to find people who only recognize money, you'll have to go to Africa, the Middle East, or Eastern Europe. Then let's do that. Make a trip with me to Eastern Europe, Jiang Chen said. Not possible. If I go there, before the plane even fully lands, I'll probably get deported. Speaking of which, are you not in the gold business anymore? Robert forced a smile. Gold is not grown out of the ground. Don't you want to do something big? Jiang Chen abruptly laughed. The other side of the phone went silent. Jiang Chen didn't rush him. He knew Robert was debating with himself, but in the end, he would agree. Without taking risks, could he still be called a businessman? He was a risk-taker down to his bones. Okay, you convinced me. But my instincts tell me that you may be crazy this time. I don't understand. You've been doing pretty well over there and successfully transitioned your business. Why? I have my own troubles, Robert, just like how you have your own, Jiang Chen said meaningfully. All right, I understand. Now that you say it, it does make sense. Once sh*t touches your hand, you can never wash it off, hee. Despite stepping out of the business after Iraq, trouble seemed to always follow Robert. He spent most of the money, and though the producer title was pretty nifty, ultimately, it boiled down to money. With money, directors were more than happy to make friends with you. And without it, who gave a **k about you? He did invest quite heavily, but he had no idea how much profit would come out of it. In the movie industry, he was a completely outsider. Then let's talk about your pay first. 20 million USD. Deal. Jiang Chen paused, then began laughing. Are you not going to ask me what the deal is? If I told you to go bomb a place, would you do it? With a sheepish laugh, Robert touched his nose and said, Ahem, my friend, I trust you won't do things like that to me. If I did receive your money to plant explosives somewhere, you'd be in trouble, too. Jiang Chen didn't deny it. Back to the topic. First, mercenaries. I don't care how, but I need 10 people with experience. The other side lapsed into silence. I'll get Nick to go to Kane, I have some connections with General Markinov. Although I won't be there in person, a recommendation letter should be enough. This guy really loves money. I'll make a trip myself, so get Nick to wait for me. Would it be acceptable to pay with gold? Of course, they only recognize gold and USD there. Secondly, refugees. Europe has many refugees, right? I'll take some of their burdens for them. Help me think because I need around 100 people. **t, what are you trying to? I remember you said yes, Jiang Chen said casually. After deliberating, Robert let out a sigh of defeat. Okay. Let me think, where do you want these people to get off the boat? Africa. Okay, I think I get what you mean. Do you want to start your own mercenaries? Or for the people behind you? Ahem, I don't think you should know too much, am I right? Jiang Chen interrupted with a smile. Mercenaries? You are underestimating me. My fault. Robert forcefully chuckled. Suddenly, he remembered the last time in Iraq, Jiang Chen had brought out a drone and a heat sensor grenade. The organization behind him was likely something he shouldn't know too much about. Capture a trafficking shop in the Mediterranean Sea, and get off at Libya. Then go on land to Nigeria. Is Nigeria chaotic enough? This was the question Jiang Chen was most concerned about. Somewhat. It's poor enough there. A few $100,000 is enough to buy a plot of land from the chiefs and have them keep their eyes closed to whatever you do there. Robert laughed. Africa was a haven for mercenaries. Poverty provided them with a source of troops, and the chaos allowed them to pass freely between borders with weapons. Although he didn't know why Jiang Chen refused to recruit cheap people from there, Robert knew by now not to ask anymore. Great, then transporting them will be up to you. I'll take care of the other things. Is that all? No, one more point. Jiang Chen smiled mischievously. I heard you're a producer in Hollywood? Ugh. Yes, I remember that you know. Robert was uncertain of the meaning behind his words. Play the bad guy for me. Your paycheck will be 20 million, in gold. Jiang Chen laughed malevolently. Chapter 115, a blockbuster. Panu Islands, located in South Pacific Ocean, was near the equator. The sunshine made this place a great destination for a vacation. The tourist attractions were plentiful in the area: natural island, volcano lake, rain forest. But because of the lack of infrastructure, it didn't manage to gain much traction. On the entire main island, the most expensive thing was probably the international airport, which they borrowed the money to build. At this time, inside the not-so-busy airport terminal, two strange-looking foreigners walked side by side. Roger, do you think I will be famous? To be honest, I smoked weed when I was 13. I was in juvenile by 15 dash. Hee hee, and then you got your A*S pounded by the black uncle inside? Who cares? The guy sitting in the Rainbow Mansion did far dumber things. Also, if you dare to use your Irish accent and call me Roger, I'll twist your head off. Robert stopped, and turned around to look at the Caucasian teen fiercely. Sorry, buddy, you know I am just nervous. Johnny waved his hand, unbothered by his words, and continued, I asked the psychiatrist before, he said he had a phobic for being too famous. Shut up, you bastard, Robert cursed out. Johnny kept his mouth shut after he heard those words. He knew that Robert was not someone to mess with. In Los Santos, even the gang leader would give him some ground. Although he seemed to have exited out of the business, it was not someone a little pawn like him would dare to mess with. Whenever someone mentioned to him Irish, 3 words would surface in Robert's head: weed, alcoholic, poor. But right now he must patiently entertain this dumb *SS because it has to do with $20 million. As to why he appeared here, it all started from the conversation a couple of days ago with Jiang Chen. Play a bad guy for me, and $20 million will be your paycheck. I'll pay in gold. Jiang Chen stopped momentarily before he continued, on an island country in the Pacific. Robert paused, then his expression suddenly changed. *T, are you going to dash? You are right. If you guessed it, then keep it to yourself. All in all, write a script for me and pick a good protagonist for me. I am going to film a blockbuster. Then an evil laugh was transmitted through the phone. He knew the laugh too well. Someone was going to have a bad time. You are crazy. Although I am a producer, I am more of an investor. Robert forced a troubled smile. He rubbed his temple and continued briefly after, okay, God. Let me think. Where are you planning to film it? How much are you going to invest? $100 million, 1 year of GDP for Panu Island. The plot will be, a Los Santos billionaire came to Panu Island with the intentions of investing in the local industry. He began bribing local officials and taking a *T on all the natives there. Okay, so that's the first movie's plot. Oh, I recommend the billionaire be acted out by a poor bastard bad to the bone. I need him to display his expressions after he suddenly gets wealthy. Haha dash, don't worry, there are too many of you in Los Santos. I'll wire the $100 million to your account. Robert paused when he heard Jiang Chen's words and asked with a perplexed expression, you are going to wire it to me? Are you not scared that I am going to run away? I trust that you won't. Honor code, right? Especially since I can get you out from IS, are you still dash? I understand, that's enough. Robert faked a laugh as he touched his nose. We are old friends. Some things don't need to be said. That's right. You are a smart person. The money that's supposed to belong to you will belong to you. Hee hee, if this deal is successful, you'll have a lot more to gain from it. Aren't you annoyed with the FBA? I can give you a backup option. Robert heard the words, and his throat twitched. He suddenly remembered a piece of entertainment news on the international section of the newspaper a while ago. December 30th, 2014, Gambia presidential office was attacked by a militant group of approximately 10 people. The militants attempted to stage a coup. This bizarre event was the direct action of the Texas real estate businessman and a Minnesota veteran. They recruited people, bought weapons, and then transported the weapons through an illegal channel to Gambia. Of course, without a doubt, they failed. Based on their original plan, the action would not receive too much resistance. They thought the soldiers in the presidential office would not pose too much resistance in a dangerous situation like that. Perhaps they would even receive the support of some soldiers who decided to join forces with them. The result was that 3 of them were died right on the spot. There was no way to defeat them. In the unsuccessful coup, the Texas real estate developer businessman was the primary sponsor, and because they broke the neutrality law, the UA prosecutor sued him. He only sponsored $220,000 as he only wanted to be a president once. Now, Robert felt like he was doing the same thing. Except this lunatic was even more insane. He was willing to put in $100 million. $100 million to buy an entire country? Not only that, as well as the cost of mercenaries. Damn it, let me ask you, are you serious? Robert's fingers were trembling. He couldn't even hold on to his phone. It was not because he was afraid, but rather he was excited. He was an adventurer at heart. If he were to really be successful, then the small firearm merchant could make history. Of course, he didn't really care about the reputation. The key was still the profit involved. He had a feeling that if he could establish a connection with the force behind Jiang Chen, his return would far exceed his previous total earning. That's right. I think you should ask for a break from your friend Lawrence. I don't want the FBA to be involved again. The tone sounded light. Of course, I'll think about it. It is getting me excited. His finger constantly rubbed the phone as there was clear excitement in his eyes. I don't care if you are excited or not, I want results. Let me be clear. This movie can only be shot once, you have to consider it carefully, Jiang Chen said slowly. Trust me, as a renowned producer in Hollywood, I, Robert, will make you extremely satisfied with my script. Panu Islands, located in South Pacific Ocean, was near the equator. The sunshine made this place a great destination for a vacation. The tourist attractions were plentiful in the area: natural island, volcano lake, rain forest. But because of the lack of infrastructure, it didn't manage to gain much traction. On the entire main island, the most expensive thing was probably the international airport, which they borrowed the money to build. At this time, inside the not-so-busy airport terminal, two strange-looking foreigners walked side by side. Roger, do you think I will be famous? To be honest, I smoked weed when I was 13. I was in juvenile by 15 dash. And then you got your A*S pounded by the black uncle inside? Who cares? The guy sitting in the Rainbow Mansion did far dumber things. Also, if you dare to use your Irish accent and call me Roger, I'll twist your head off. Robert stopped, and turned around to look at the Caucasian teen fiercely. Sorry, buddy, you know I am just nervous. Johnny waved his hand, unbothered by his words, and continued, I asked the psychiatrist before, he said he had a phobic for being too famous. Shut up, you bastard, Robert cursed out. Johnny kept his mouth shut after he heard those words. He knew that Robert was not someone to mess with. In Los Santos, even the gang leader would give him some ground. Although he seemed to have exited out of the business, it was not someone a little pawn like him would dare to mess with. Whenever someone mentioned to him Irish, 3 words would surface in Robert's head: weed, alcoholic, poor. But right now he must patiently entertain this dumb *SS because it has to do with $20 million US. As to why he appeared here, it all started from the conversation a couple of days ago with Jiang Chen. Play a bad guy for me, and 20 million will be your paycheck. I'll pay in gold. Jiang Chen stopped momentarily before he continued, on an island country in the Pacific. Robert paused, then his expression suddenly changed. *T, are you going to dash? You are right. If you guessed it, then keep it to yourself. All in all, write a script for me and pick a good protagonist for me. I am going to film a blockbuster. Then an evil laugh was transmitted through the phone. He knew the laugh too well. Someone was going to have a bad time. You are crazy. Although I am a producer, I am more of an investor. Robert forced a troubled smile. He rubbed his temple and continued briefly after, okay, God. Let me think. Where are you planning to film it? How much are you going to invest? 100 million USD, 1 year of GDP for Panu Island. The plot will be, a Los Santos billionaire came to Panu Island with the intentions of investing in the local industry. He began bribing local officials and taking a *T on all the natives there. Okay, so that's the first movie's plot. Oh, I recommend the billionaire be acted out by a poor bastard bad to the bone. I need him to display his expressions after he suddenly gets wealthy. Don't worry, there are too many of you in Los Santos. I'll wire the 100 million to your account. Robert paused when he heard Jiang Chen's words and asked with a perplexed expression, you are going to wire it to me? Are you not scared that I am going to run away? I trust that you won't. Honor code, right? Especially since I can get you out from IS, are you still dash? I understand, that's enough. Robert faked a laugh as he touched his nose. We are old friends. Some things don't need to be said. That's right. You are a smart person. The money that's supposed to belong to you will belong to you. If this deal is successful, you'll have a lot more to gain from it. Aren't you annoyed with the FBA? I can give you a backup option. Robert heard the words, and his throat twitched. He suddenly remembered a piece of entertainment news on the international section of the newspaper a while ago. December 30th, 2014, Gambia presidential office was attacked by a militant group of approximately 10 people. The militants attempted to stage a coup. This bizarre event was the direct action of the Texas real estate businessman and a Minnesota veteran. They recruited people, bought weapons, and then transported the weapons through an illegal channel to Gambia. Of course, without a doubt, they failed. Based on their original plan, the action would not receive too much resistance. They thought the soldiers in the presidential office would not pose too much resistance in a dangerous situation like that. Perhaps they would even receive the support of some soldiers who decided to join forces with them. The result was that 3 of them were shot dead right on the spot. There was no way to defeat them. In the unsuccessful coup, the Texas real estate developer businessman was the primary sponsor, and because they broke the neutrality law, the UA prosecutor sued him. He only sponsored 220,000 USD as he only wanted to be a president once. Now, Robert felt like he was doing the same thing. Except this lunatic was even more insane, he was willing to put in 100 million USD. 100 million USD to buy an entire country? Not only that, as well as the cost of mercenaries. Damn it, let me ask you, are you serious? Robert's fingers were trembling. He couldn't even hold on to his phone. It was not because he was afraid, but rather he was excited. He was an adventurer at heart. If he were to really be successful, then the small firearm merchant could make history. Of course, he didn't really care about the reputation. The key was still the profit involved. He had a feeling that if he could establish a connection with the force behind Jiang Chen, his return would far exceed his previous total earning. That's right. I think you should ask for a break from your friend Lawrence. I don't want the FBA to be involved again. The tone sounded light. Of course, I'll think about it. Hee, it is getting me excited. His finger constantly rubbed the phone as there was clear excitement in his eyes. I don't care if you are excited or not, I want results. Let me be clear. This movie can only be shot once, you have to consider it carefully, Jiang Chen said slowly. Trust me, as a renowned producer in Hollywood, I, Robert, will make you extremely satisfied with my script. Chapter 116, Messaging Function Online. After ending the conversation with Robert, Jiang Chen returned to the pool. Just as a smirk spread across his face and he was ready to jump into the pool and have an intimate moment with Aisha, his phone rang again. It was Xia Xiu. It was not the right time. He cursed in his mind, as he unhappily picked up the phone. But when he heard the news from the other side, his unhappiness faded. First was from Future 1.0. Because they were approaching 250 million downloads shortly after the software was available. In a few days Jiang Chen was gone and based on the marketing department's plan, Future 1.0 welcomed its first update. Now, the earnings were already evident as a result of the update. Rather than an update, it was releasing a previously locked function. The update opened up the community system, everyone would acquire a random account after the patch. Other than cleaning the exquisite design, the chat interface had nothing special. To put it simply, everyone had an account that they could freely add friends, set up chat groups, and post statuses on. The functions were not unique as all the other chat program had it, but the one thing that made it stand out among its competitors were smart friend search. Based on the user's description, Little White can accurately search for the chat partner based on the description. Of course, it was up to the user to decide on what information to make available or not. The user's personality was based on the data collected during daily interactions and analyzed based on a special software. The results were 97% accurate and would be hidden from the user and stored on the server's side. The personality only recorded positive traits and did not include negative traits, since no one would want to expose their weakness. The user could choose to publish these traits, or re-evaluate after a period, but could not change the traits. For example, if a man wanted a big-boobed, gorgeous, energetic, being able to cook, nice to parent girl, Little White would find it since the user base was already at 250 million. Except that it would be up to the other side to add you or not. Even if you get rejected, Little White would suggest you lower the standards, and improve upon oneself. If the random selection were activated, Little White would use smart setting to match friends with the highest compatibility. Apart from that, Future 1.0 also introduced VIP. Although it was similar to QQ's member policy, there was a slight innovation. Other than putting the red VIP symbol beside the user ID, it also introduced contribution system correlated with levels. There was a funny joke on Weibo before. The designer was driven insane. Suddenly, he jumped up and yelled, "I want to design a game with only two functions, pay and ranking." So, in the end, the game was actually introduced, which was Bilibili's new anime sponsorship plan. The innovation was replicated by Future Technology. 1 renminbi equal to 10 contributions, 100 contributions would level up to VIP 1. To upgrade to VIP 2, it would require 1000 contribution which was equivalent to 100 renminbi. Based on this scale, VIP 5 would need 100,000 renminbi. To maintain the current status, 10 renminbi would be enough. Not paying would hide the VIP symbol but it would not level down. Other than that, there were also 10 diamond VIPs that were granted automatically to the top 10 contributors. Would people actually pay? Yes. 2 days after the introduction of the community feature, there were 200 VIP 5 users born. The top of the contribution list was a coal tycoon with a contribution of 100 million. That meant he paid 1 million. Why would people be so willing to pay? Imagine this. If a beauty searched you, the first thing she saw was a VIP 6 or diamond symbol, what kind of reaction would it be? Or some would actually put a VIP limit on the search, prohibit anyone below VIP 3 from adding them. Showing off and bragging were common flaws of all humans, especially rich people that have too much money. They only needed to be recognized. The massive user base of Little White and the existence of the contribution system gave them the perfect platform to show off. Based on the backend stats, the guy at the top of the list almost had his friend request feature blow up. Although it was not Jiang Chen's intention, the pure Little White became another great app for one-night stands after Momo and WeChat. Other than that, VIP user also had other exclusive privileges. For example, the invitation for beta testing of the mobile game, it would select 10,000 users from each of the different levels. Therefore, the 100 million users would split 10,000 codes. The millions of VIP 1 would also split 10,000 codes. The VIP 5 users would each get one as there are only a few hundred of them. Do you want the invitation code? Then pay more money. This era-defining mobile game had a lot of expectation and hype. Based on the marketing department's research on Taobao, an invitation code was propped up to 1,000 renminbi, which almost broke the record for highest price paid for an invitation code. Of course, this design certainly caused some people to be unhappy. Especially those people with ill intentions who hired internet armies to control the direction of criticisms. The only point was that it was unfair for so many normal users to split only 10,000 codes. That's unfair. We are going to protest. But those brain-dead comments did not have any negative impact on Future 1.0, but rather it triggered angry responses from Little White's fan. Once it turned into a debate, it became a hot topic which was a form of free advertisement for Future 1.0. When the people with ill intentions realized that the internet armies they hired did not create the perception they wished, it was too late to regret. Part of the success was because of Xia Shiyu's effort. When she discovered the signs, she immediately responded and hired her own internet army to steer the direction of the conversation. She perfectly used the tricks of the opponents to turn this into a successful marketing campaign. All in all, Future 1.0's financial report was very impressive. Within 10 days of the community function, the company's net earning was 100 million RMB. The number would only increase with the continued operation of Future 1.0, as well as higher user dependence. Xia Shiyu even confidently stated that within 2 years, she could break the yearly revenue record set by the member system of Penguin Group. The other area was the mobile game. After a period of marketing, the invitation code was already distributed to the market through Little White. Part of the invitation codes has been circulated through the VIP system. Even if it has been circulated to people who didn't want to play, because it was not tied to the account, third parties could purchase the code and sell it for margin. As to the code being propped to 1,000 renminbi, even if they were not fans of New Era, they would be interested in the invitation code. If they didn't play the game, they could always sell it for money. There was nothing to lose. So naturally, it turned into another form of advertisement. Since the Little White user base already reached 250 million, those people would pay attention to the game because of the expensive invitation code even if they didn't play the game. Within 2 months, Future Technology was already profitable. It made the venture capitals that were waiting for the opportunity frustrated that they missed the hen that laid golden eggs. They previously planned to wait for Future Technology to have cash flow problems before they opened their greedy mouths and took the company with endless amounts of potential. But who would have thought that Future Technology didn't lack money in the first place? Even Penguin had to beg venture capitals. When he heard 100 million in profits, Jiang Chen straight up told Xia Shiyu that he would use 1 million as a bonus. Unlike other tech companies, Future Technology's cost was insanely low. Other than the cost of labor and server maintenance, after tax, the rest would be profit. As to research and development, what was that? Only a couple of cans of food. Seeing that you are working so diligently, should I give you a raise? Jiang Chen laughed. His mood was indeed delighted. Although the 100 million was nothing to his net assets, it was a good start. It was the first stream of clean money he earned. No need. My 1% dividend is already enough. From her voice, that girl was also in a good mood. It was a feat being able to accomplish this with a new team. After the 100 million equity infusion, she proactively brought up decreasing her share percentage. So after the change, her share in the company changed to 1%. Although Jiang Chen was surprised, he didn't stop her. Even if it was just 1% share, the 100 million profit this year was a lot. Because she was not the legal representative, there was a 20% income tax. But even after that, it would still be 800,000 renminbi. 2 more months until year-end. With this year's profit, any dividend would exceed her current salary. Bonus and salary were meaningless to her now. Because it was work time, Xia Shiyu ended the call after reporting to Jiang Chen. It wasn't until now that Jiang Chen noticed that there were a bunch of missed calls. Starting from yesterday, there was a call every half an hour. After going to the apocalypse, the phone was in his storage dimension. He only took out the phone after calling Robert, so all the missed phone call messages came in. This girl? A smile curled up on Jiang Chen's mouth. Although she always kept a cold and serious face, she could be surprisingly cute at times. Aisha leaned beside the pool. Her mouth pouted slightly. The graceful and serene legs were moving through the water disinterestedly. She was not the type to get jealous, but for the phone call that clearly interrupted the intimate moment with her and her husband, it did make her a little unsatisfied. Jiang Chen threw the phone into the storage dimension before noticing the expression on Aisha's face. He smiled. He didn't even take off his clothes before he dived into the water. In Aisha's light outcry, Jiang Chen hugged the gentle and loyal girl with a smirk. Compared to before, they were no longer awkward. From her daily actions, he clearly sensed her love. To be fair, he did not have feelings for her in the beginning. He just somewhat accepted her. But because of her proactiveness, Aisha's love finally slipped into his heart. Her gentleness, her understanding, and her sacrifice were almost extinct in the modern world. Just by looking into her eyes, he would be melted by the love. He was uncontrollably drawn to her. It was time for him to be proactive. Can you teach me how to swim? Jiang Chen said with a smirk, as he blew into her ear. Aisha lowered her head shyly, and then she put her hands on his wet shirt. Chapter 117, Purchasing a Food Processing Plant. The next morning, Jiang Chen woke up from his sweet dream. He looked at the adorable girl beside him, sleeping as calmly as a cat, and his mouth curled up. Mouth slightly closed, graceful eyebrows, eyelashes gently trembling, and the somewhat messy hair. The porcelain doll-like white skin was cast with slight redness on her cheeks, and from her rhythmic breathing, Jiang Chen could hear a hint of tiredness and joy. It was a bit too crazy last night. Jiang Chen thought about last night as his face turned red. He didn't know if it was his illusion, but he felt that every time Aisha was treated roughly by him, she would be excited, especially with her hands pulled behind her back, from the back. He awkwardly touched his nose, and then gently tucked Aisha in before quietly sneaking down from the bed. He hadn't cooked breakfast in a long time. Jiang Chen, satisfied, looked at the buttered toast and oatmeal with milk on the table with a great sense of accomplishment. I definitely have the potential to be a great man, he narcissistically murmured. He then relaxingly sat beside the table to enjoy the breakfast. He still had a lot of important things to do, so he had to wake up earlier than usual. He cleaned everything up and left a sticker on the table before he left the door humming. He drove straight to the rural area with his Maybach. Jiang Chen still needed to do some preparation work for his island purchase plan. The sooner, the better. Robert probably started the plan already on his side. To be fair, he was even scared by his own plan. If he made a mistake by accident, he would enter the blacklist of the international police. But then he just needed it to succeed, right? Aisha opened her weary eyes and slowly sat up on the bed. She smoothed her slightly messy hair and stared blankly at the empty pillow, her mind just zoned out for a moment. She didn't know why she fell in love with Jiang Chen, but the feeling was that intense. Whenever she saw him, her heartbeat would increase. Whenever he hugged her, her entire body would feel hot. She blankly smiled as she remembered last night. Suddenly she woke up from her drowsy state. Oh no, I forgot to cook breakfast. In her perspective, to be a qualified wife, she should put the prepared breakfast on the table before the husband headed out for work. Although it was not written in the religion, it was the family tradition from her mother's side. That's how she had measured herself. She knew that her husband was a great man, including the woman that came back with him on the car. He probably has a lot of wives. Even if she wouldn't get jealous, she still craved more attention. This included a controlled diet. She did not know the genetic vaccine improved her digestive ability. She didn't need to control her diet to avoid that extra fat on her stomach, proper exercise, to make herself look fit and charming. The nutrient was also marvelous, as it seemed to improve her skin condition. The only drawback was the awkward pee-tube. She also worked diligently on housework. But she was too tired last night. Even when she woke up this morning, her legs still felt sore. That's why she slept in. She quickly got out of the bed. Aisha put a long white dress shirt on her gorgeous figure and then ran downstairs with her legs exposed. However, she was disappointed. Jiang Chen already left. Frustrated by her own mistake, after washing up, Aisha grumpily came to the kitchen to make some food for herself. When she saw the breakfast already on the table, she paused. Her heart felt warm. There was a note on the table. The writing was really neat, and she could understand it with her Han level now. I won't come home to eat, you don't have to wait for me. Take care of yourself. Jiang Chen. She put the notes in front of her chest as a flush of warmth appeared on her face. She suddenly remembered why. Because of this gentleness, that was what made her uncontrollably fell in love with him. Although he always gave off a naughty feeling, he always took great care of her. He didn't discriminate her because of her refugee status nor treat her brutally. Her hand subconsciously crossed her chest as her finger gently pressed the button on her shirt. Dad, Mom, I am living a happy life in this foreign country. Don't worry about me. She grasped onto the note tightly as she prayed. Xinlong Food Processing Plant. The gray concrete wall looked relatively clean, the surrounding environment was not too bad either. Although it was small, it had everything in there. Just from the outside, Jiang Chen was quite pleased with the plant. He got off the car and looked around before he quickly found the person he was looking for. A middle-aged man squatting in front of the door, smoking, quickly stepped on the cigarette after he saw Jiang Chen. Forcing a smile, he came to greet him. But that smile was no better looking than him crying. The information said he was 31 years, but the 180 centimeters man has a hunched back like a 50-year-old elder. The whiteness on the side of his hair and the engraved face was not because of the passage of time, but rather the misfortunes in life. Jiang Chen, you should already have seen my information. Jiang Chen didn't judge this man too much, as he extended his hand with a smile. Zheng Hongjie, owner of the Xinlong Food Processing Plant. Zheng Hongjie shook Jiang Chen's hand, and forced another smile. He then gave Jiang Chen a welcoming gesture. Mr. Jiang, follow me to take a look at the plant. Uh-huh. Jiang Chen nodded. Both of them entered the plant side by side. Jiang Chen noticed the dust on the production line. This place hasn't produced in a while. 2 canned food processing lines, an instant noodle line, and a cookie line. Our work was mostly in processing before, but no one wants to work with us now. Zheng Hongjie's smile was bitter. He then led Jiang Chen to back of the plant. This is the warehouse, including the 4 empty acreages of land. We previously had the plan to expand the plant, but now it looks like it is not necessary. I'll sell you the production equipment at 70%, we'll make it 300,000. The land and plant itself are a bit more expensive, 2.4 million, can't go lower than that. After finishing, Zheng Hongjie stopped talking and looked at Jiang Chen's reaction. He estimated in his mind and nodded rather pleased. The price was fair, even a bit lower than the market price. He already asked the intermediary before, the plant's cost was around 3 million. This guy must have met some trouble with money, or else he wouldn't need to sell the plant at a lower price this hastily. Although he already decided to purchase it, Jiang Chen's eyes moved slightly. He didn't reply, but rather he gave Zheng Hongjie a cigarette with a smile and dragged him aside. Mr. Zheng, I am quite pleased with the price. But I am curious, based on the construction of the plant, you are not the type to have improper planning. What made you want to sell your asset? Zheng Hongjie didn't reject the cigarette as he skillfully lit it up. He blew a smoke ring. The just 31-year-old man had wrinkles squished together on his face, and he bitterly smiled again. Stock market. Although it was only 2 words, Jiang Chen instantly knew his sadness. Chapter 118, The Bankrupt Zheng Hongjie. There is a famous quote in A Fortress Besieged, marriage is like a siege, people want to go outside, people want to come inside. The same word would apply to the stock market without it being the slightest bit unfit. 5 years ago, Zheng Hongjie was only an ordinary taxi driver. Because of chatting with a passenger once, he heard about the food processing industry. The slight drunk boosted to him how processing food made money, and at that time he was tempted. Being only 20, he didn't want to be a taxi driver for his entire life. From that point on, he started to learn about the unfamiliar industry. With the family saving as well as borrowings from relatives, he successfully purchased a poorly operated small processing plant. Although he didn't go to university before, because of his hard work and desire to learn, he used his learned on-the-spot operation knowledge to expand the small facility to a large plant. Contracts flew to him like snowflakes. The canned food and instant noodles he produced were not only high in quality, but the price was also superior compared to his competitors. The plant was getting more and more profitable, buying land, purchasing production lines, hiring more employees. Even the famous Master Kung sent them a contract for food processing. Within 5 years, Boss Zheng's name spread throughout his hometown. His former friends began calling him Boss Zheng, Brother Zheng. From nothing to starting his plant in Wanghai City. Being able to buy a car, buy a house, and returning to his hometown in glory. From a taxi driver to a boss, his experience in the 5 years could be written into a book. But everything changed at the end of last year. The stock market sunk to the bottom, rumors of the index striking 6124 finally faded. The stock market was averaging around 3,000 at the time. One of his business friends told him once when they were drinking that stock markets were a good place to make money, and if he had money, he should give it a try. Although he was a bit drunk, Zheng Hongjie's head was still sober. His consciousness told him that this zero-sum game was not right. How could a market without producing any goods create value? Zheng Hongjie didn't listen to his friend, but rather he told his friend not to be so drawn into tricky things. But his friend only laughed and didn't bother with him. For months later, his friend bought 2 apartments in the city. His previous car was upgraded to a BMW. When they were drinking again, the friend gloated on the fact that he used 1 million to make a stunning return of 5 million. Seeing his friend was now wealthy, Zhang Hongjie felt regret. If he listened to his friend's words, it wouldn't just be 2 apartments, he would probably be living in a mansion by now. He worked hard for 4 months, and in the end didn't even make as much as his friend made in a few days. After a few more rounds, perhaps due to envy, Zhang Hongjie casually asked, "Is it too late to get in now?" When he heard those words, his friend was immediately drawn to the conservation. He constantly boasted at how the economic condition is superb, it is only going to go up, there is no backing down this time. After a passion-filled conversation, Zhang Hongjie was tempted. With only the food processing plant, it would take 10 years before he could become a millionaire, but he could with only a few days in the stock market. When he returned home, he hesitantly opened an account. Under the guidance of his friend, he tested the water by putting in 20,000. He didn't pay too much attention to the account as he was busy with his business until 1 month later when he remembered that he bought stock. He only opened the account out of curiosity and wanted to see how much money that 20,000 turned into. If it were a small amount, even if he lost it all, it would be okay. It would have been better if he didn't look. He immediately jumped up when he saw the number. The 20,000 turned into 50,000. He felt the world dazzling around him. It was not excitement, but regret. That's right, it was regret. If he put in 2 million, it would have become 5 million. If he borrowed some money to buy 10 million, he would be a millionaire already. Humans' greed was infinite, the piercing 5,000 red number. He remembered Renren newspaper, the bull market is only halfway to the top. He immediately put all 2 million from his account into the stock market. Out of the 2 million, there was a 1 million loan used for the plant's expansion. Renren newspaper would not trick its citizens, right? XXX can't be lying? If the stock market crashed, then XXX would be the first one to react. It's hard to believe, but they did the trick. What can you do? In the start, he did feel excited as a 2% increase was 40,000. By just looking at that red line, he felt his entire body shake with excitement. He was starting to daydream about the life of a millionaire and forgot the caution he had before. With just half a month, he experienced the feeling of dropping down from heaven to hell. The index headed straight down, thousands of stocks with 10% decreases became the norm, but the media kept pushing it up. The right opportunity to get into the bull market. Short-term adjustments for higher adjustment. Stock hits rock bottom, now is the time to buy. The index can't drop anymore. The central government is discussing interest rate drop. 80% of organizations think the stock market is at the bottom. Pension plan is in discussion to enter the market. He continued to buy and only to continue to lose. The friend that promised him that it wouldn't drop below 4,000 points was nowhere to be seen. It was rumored that he borrowed money he shouldn't have, left his wife and children and escaped to the south. Zhang Hongjie wanted to die, but he couldn't. He has a wife that loved him dearly, and a daughter that idolized him. The plant expansion was a no-go. Because he used the loan for other purposes, to avoid legal consequences, as well as being forced by the bank to sell assets to repay debt, Zhang Hongjie decided to borrow elsewhere to fill the hole. He borrowed money from his business friends and repaid the bank loan. Then he put the rest of the money into the plant, hoping he could slowly repay the debt. However, another unfortunate event occurred. Within less than a month, the high rising pork price increased the price of other foods, which directly increased the cost of producing canned foods and slammed the food processing industry. But to repay this debt, he practically accepted all orders and used the guarantee fee to maintain production and repay debt. With the price from the previous month, based on the high rising cost of production, for every canned food he produced, he lost 1 renminbi. But he had to keep producing, or else he would have to pay for breach of contract. If it was before, he could have easily handled this crisis with the cash on hand, but now, after debating, he chose to breach the contract and lost every single cent. He lost all opportunities to start up again. The bank would not loan him money, and he could no longer pay for the workers, so he had to let go of all employees. The 5 years was like a dream. Because of a legal Ponzi scheme, he went from high up in the clouds to hell. The stock market was like an inception, people on the outside were afraid, people on the inside couldn't escape. He left a sentence worth thinking about. Then he blew the last smoke ring before stepping on the cigarette butt. If he knew what would happen today, he wouldn't have done it from the beginning. To be honest, Jiang Chen also followed the stock market before, but before this July, he had no money in his pocket. He was quite lucky that he was always an outsider. Silently listening till he finished, Jiang Chen let out a sigh. Your experience could be written into a book. Do you have any plans? Probably driving. Selling the factory should be enough to pay off the debt and the missing salaries. Although I am not a boss anymore, I still have to maintain my morale as a person. He laughed self-mockingly as he shook his head. Morale is a bright spot. Jiang Chen secretly nodded his head as he heard Hongjia's words. He didn't know how to operate a plant. Rather than going to a headhunter to find a manager, it would be better to hire this expert right away. I am talking about your future plans, not your plan for tomorrow. Jiang Chen smiled. He looked at the wry face, unfitting for his age, as he spoke lightly. Zhang Hongjia paused for a moment. Me? Probably driving dash. A waste of talent. I personally look highly of people with ability. Jiang Chen waved his hand and interrupted him, and he continued with a smile. What about this? Do you have any interest in working in my factory? Xinlong food processing plant is still called Xinlong. You are still the head. Finishing his words, Jiang Chen extended his right hand and looked at him with a bright smile. Shocked, the aged face suddenly regained some liveliness. From the initial shock to the final excitement, Zhang Hongjie extended his hand out, trembling, and held on to Jiang Chen's hand. He never imagined that the new owner of the factory would risk the bad luck and hire a failure. Regardless, the plant went down because of him. The closure of the factory was not because of your operational mistake. I think Xinlong would only be able to generate maximum value in your hands. I trust that you won't easily just let go of so many years of hard work. What do you think? Ida. An answer without hesitation. He put Jiang Chen's hand down as Zhang Hongjie picked up the cigarette butt he threw on the ground. What are you doing? Jiang Chen was bewildered. Sanitation is critical in a food processing plant. When I was the head, without exaggerating, there was not a single bud in the entire plant. As if the spring breeze just blew by, all of a sudden, the rigid face returned to its former day liveliness. Jiang Chen shrugged, extinguished the bud, and followed him to the trash can to throw it in the bin. Now that I have purchased the company, I will inject 1 million into it. I demand you to restart production within half a month. I just want to ask one thing, are you confident? Yes. Seeing Zhang Hongjie shout out at the top of his lungs, Jiang Chen laughed and patted him on the shoulder. That's the attitude. I trust you. Now go with me to the bureau to finish the process. Boss, could I invite you to lunch after the process? I don't have a lot of money, so I can't treat you at a restaurant. The 30-something man forced a laugh. Regardless, he wanted to invite the person that gave him a second chance for a meal to express his sincere gratitude. It was the tradition of his hometown, and his insistence throughout his life. Slightly unexpecting it, Jiang Chen immediately laughed. No problem. He noticed out of a sudden that the abject man's chest finally rose up. As if he received a new life. Chapter 119, It's You Again? The process was completed quickly, and Jiang Chen acquired the rights to the factory. When the 2.7 million was transferred to Zhang Hongjie's bank account, and he received the confirmation message on his phone, the man finally lets out a sigh of relief. He still acted as the plant manager with a base salary of 8,000, and based on sales there would be bonuses. Just like before, he would have to take care of everything from marketing to production. Although a bit overwhelming, Jiang Chen gave him a lucrative bonus plan. It would depend on his sales to see how much he would get in the end. I won't care too much on how the plant is operated, but you have to do a few things for me. Although he said it casually, Zhang Hongjie still sensed the inflexibility in his tone. Please go ahead. Zhang Hongjie nodded with an earnest expression. First, if you want to do it, then go big. Processing for other people can be put aside. We'll have to develop our own brand. Our own brand? Zhang Hongjie forced a smile, and continued, to be honest, I tried to start my own brand before, but the cost is too high. Advertisement, sponsorship, distribution channel, it was incomparable to the profit margin of processing for other people, there's also more risk. Jiang Chen shook his head laughing. Processing for other people is enough if we want to remain small, but I don't plan on doing that. I'll continue to invest in the early stages, including research and development, upgrading to the larger production lines, and expanding the plant. You don't have to worry about the sales channel, I'll mention it next. As to distribution and advertisement, I'll take care of it. Funny, there is no channel better than the internet, right? Promotion could be done on Future 1.0, such as Free Moon Cake during the Mid-Autumn Festival. Or when he makes Liu Yao famous, getting her to promote the brand would be simple. Seeing the boss so certain, although Zhang Hongjie was still unsure, he didn't continue asking. Second, this is the most important point. We'll transition to international trade. I need you to register for import and export requirement. The destination is currently Panu Island. We'll import the fruit to produce fruit can and sell domestically, then export other canned food. When he heard Jiang Chen's words, Zhang Hongjie slightly raised his eyebrows. he asked wondering. I considered export before, but it was not as easy as it seems. First being that we don't have a strong brand, second being the cost. We don't have any advantages compared to corporations in Australia or the Philippines. And the most critical factor is transport. I know a little about Panu Island. It's a small island country in the Pacific, and it doesn't even have a deep water port to dock larger ships. You don't have to worry about that. It won't be long until an investor builds a cargo port there. You only need to expand production and sell to them, and produce the cheap food imported from there into food cans. Jiang Chen smiled mysteriously and didn't explain more. Zhang Hongjie paused as he had a weird expression on his face, looking at Jiang Chen. Although he was curious as to why the boss knew a lot about the third world country, but since the boss didn't plan to say more, he stopped asking. Third, this not something official, so you only need to keep it in mind. I need you to have surplus goods every month. It was okay to buy from the food store owner in the short term, but it was not a reliable long-term situation. Since goods only went into the warehouse and never out, 1 or 2 times, it wouldn't cause any suspicion, but any more than that would be problematic. Once the fishbone's population increases, it would have a higher demand for food. A food processing plant would be the safer choice. Surplus goods? Zhang Hongjie almost thought he heard it wrong. Surplus goods referred to goods overproduced. Usually, it would either be given out to employees for free or discounted at a low price. It was the first time he heard someone wanted surplus good. I'll let you know the amount, you only need to keep that in mind. These goods don't need to be branded. It's not for selling. I have other uses. After hearing Jiang Chen's explanation, Zhang Hongjie didn't ask more. Although it was an odd request, it was nothing complicated. Him, being a boss before, knew that he only needed to listen. Dad. My cute daughter, haha, Daddy is back. Zhang Hongjie hugged his daughter, who leaped towards him with a warm smile. Dad, who is this? The adorable girl blinked her big eyes looking at Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen kneeled down and looked at this energetic little girl with a smile. He then said with an amiable voice, Uncle is your dad's friend. What's your name? My name is Jiejie, I am in 2nd grade at experimental school, Jiejie replied in a cute tone. Jiang Chen paused when he heard experimental school. Uncle, are you okay? Jiejie tilted her head. Oh, nothing, hee. Jiang Chen forced a laugh and answered in a light-hearted tone. Sun Jiao is probably still waiting for me on the other side. He peeked at his right hand. He tried this morning, but it still didn't work. You are back, and this is? A virtuous-looking woman came out of the kitchen and asked her husband when she saw Jiang Chen. This is my boss, Mr. Jiang. Zhang Hongjie smiled at his wife. You, finally sold the plant? I did. But Mr. Jiang hired me to continue to run the plant. Kong Jia looked at the smile she hasn't seen for a long time on her husband's face as her eyes became moist. She took a deep breath in, and to both Jiang Chen and Zhang Hongjie's surprise, she sincerely bowed towards Jiang Chen. Honey? What are you doing? Jiang Chen looked at her actions, not knowing how to react. For a while, Hongjie had been worried about the plant every day. He regretted trusting his friend's word. I was really scared that one day if he couldn't think things through, he would leave us. Tears began to emerge from Kong Jie's eyes. Seeing the tears in his wife's eyes, Zhang Hongjie suddenly hugged her. Fool, there is no way I would leave you. The tough man's voice had a sob tone to it. Jiang Chen silently watched them as a smile emerged on his face. It would best not to interrupt them right now. Uncle. Jiejie looked up and blinked her big eyes at Jiang Chen. Do you have something, little Jiejie? Jiang Chen regathered his thoughts and kneeled down again, rubbing her hair. Thank you, Jiejie said sweetly. Haha. Jiang Chen suddenly burst out laughing. Jiejie tilted her head and looked at the uncle in front of her, confused. No problem, Jiejie is very courteous. For some reason, his mood was delighted at this moment. Hee. Because she received recognition, Jiejie smiled shyly. After Zhang Hongjie had finished hugging his wife, he looked awkwardly at Jiang Chen. It was rather impolite to leave the guest hanging during a display of affection. The thin-skinned Kong Jie already fleeted to the kitchen. Jiejie tilted her head not knowing the situation, while Zhang Hongjie expressed his apology with a blushed face. Jiang Chen, with a smile, motioned it was okay. He then began to chat with Zhang Hongjie on the sofa. Zhang Hongjie was a talkative person as he was a taxi driver before he started a business. Although his experience was nowhere near as exciting as Jiang Chen, his depth of experience far exceeded Jiang Chen's. His wife Kong Jia was a traditional woman, she virtuously cooked the meal and asked everyone to eat. On the table, Jiang Chen and Zhang Hongjie had a few drinks. Jiejie curiously reached her hand towards the cup, which made Jiang Chen chuckle more. Is this the feeling of home? He thought about it, and it did feel like this when he was at the wily old fox Wang Dihai's place. He was suddenly envious of the feeling. He didn't know why. Maybe it was time to go back to his hometown Lake City. Perhaps during New Year, it was already October. Jiang Chen fell into a deep thought while watching the table filled with home-cooked dishes. But suddenly, a fierce door-smashing sound transmitted from the outside. It forced him out of his thoughts. Who? Jiang Chen was lost as he looked at Zheng Hongjie. But Zheng Hongjie was confused as well. He exchanged a confused look with his wife before he got up and walked towards the door. You are? Zheng Hongjie opened the door as he looked confusedly at the men in front. Fu*ku, we are here to collect our money. A few young men in shirts saw that the door was opened and they didn't hesitate to force their way in. Wait, do you guys have the wrong person? After being pushed aside, Zheng Hongjie struggled frightened. This is the loan agreement, 3 million. We are debt collectors. A young man with a buzz cut aggressively pushed Zheng Hongjie as they surrounded him, sneering. What are you guys doing? Let Hongjie go. I am going to call the police. Hongjie took out the phone as she said shakingly. Police? Don't use cops to scare me. Let me get this straight. Do you know who my boss Sir Chang is? The young man said cockily. A man in shades stood behind him with a cigarette in his mouth. He didn't speak. This guy was probably Sir Chang. Dad. Jia saw that her father was in trouble as her adorable face twisted. With tears in her eyes she wanted to run up. Don't come, Jia. Dad is okay. Zheng Hongjie immediately stopped her. Hongjie also grabbed Jia and hugged her. He took a deep breath as Zheng Hongjie looked at the young men. I already prepared the money, and I'll borrow from my relatives some more in the next few days. Next few days? I want to take care of this today. At this moment, the young man suddenly saw Jiang Chen. His thuggish look instantly froze. To be honest, Jiang Chen was surprised from the start. He didn't expect to see him here again. Jiang Chen mischievously examined the young man as he opened his mouth. Oh, what a coincidence, it's you again? Chapter 120, Don't do it, I'll do it myself. A young man who didn't finish high school followed by a few tattooed subordinates who also didn't finish high school. It would be more satisfying if he managed to hook up with a rebellious girl while still studying and act as the boss in front of a bunch of students. Although in front of a real boss, Lu Hu was still nothing. But compared to other punks, he was at least somewhat competent. He practiced a bit of martial arts, overlooked a construction site in the past and hustled cash from grade schoolers. Ahem, that last part didn't count. In any case, the Hongyi gang leader, Lu Changlong, recognized his ability during a street brawl. After being released by the police, he joined Hongyi gang, and through his fighting prowess, he finally climbed to success. However, his blissful life changed completely one day. His brothers surrounded a B***tch with a beautiful face without a background during one of their modus operandi. Paying off debt was expected from anyone, otherwise, paying off using one's body also worked fine. It wasn't his first time doing something like this. But an average-looking guy came by and not only he was physically strong, but he was also wielding a gun. Lu Hu was scared, and it suddenly dawned on him that he messed with the wrong person. The man didn't even bat an eye when he shot and maimed the leg of one of his thugs. When he felt the hot muzzle pressing against his temple, his hands went cold, and his legs turned weak. In short, although he had brought the money back, he failed to complete the task given to him by his boss, which was to bring the person back, and made an enemy with someone he shouldn't have. This normally shouldn't be a big deal. After all, Lu Changlong had worked for Hongyi gang for so many years and had earned plenty of merits, so he shouldn't be kicked out just because of this. However, something unexpected happened which made him relive his former street thug life. It went something like this. Lu Changlong had received a phone call from his younger brother, Lu Anshan, asking him if he wanted to get rich. Lu Anshan recounted the story about Jiang Chen selling gold and had emphasized the fact that this person had a lot of gold, and there must be a stable source where it came from. Lu Changlong was tempted, but gold alone was not enough to sway him. However, if it was a stable source of income, that was something entirely different. He didn't care if it was a private mine or an ancient tomb. After all, how hard could it be to pry the secret out of someone with little or no background on his turf? Though before making a move, he cautiously investigated beforehand. The result of the investigation frightened him. This Jiang Chen was no simple character. Being the chairman of Future Technology was not the important point. The crucial point was when he hinted at his friends in politics, the response he received was, "Do not touch this guy." Even worse was the old city mayor personally made a directive with one word, support. His friend only vaguely explained to him that if he dared to touch him, all his hideous secrets would be exposed the next day, then he would be incarcerated and he would be beyond saving. The gang could only scare the ordinary people. Not taking into consideration the people the city official personally stated to support, anyone with some background would be difficult to offend. Because of this, his action couldn't be seen under the light. Of course, he didn't dare to make a move on Jiang Chen at the moment. He also didn't dare to use Lu Hu, who had offended Jiang Chen. Although Jiang Chen might not remember it, there was no point in taking the risk. So Lu Hu lost his job and the thugs, who followed him, left one by one. Fortunately, one of his drinking friends recognized his talent in debt collecting, so he employed him to work in a debt collection agency. Scaring and hoaxing people. This combination would certainly put pressure on most ordinary citizens to pay off their debts. 28% was not a bad commission rate, especially the faster it was completed, the higher the commission would be. For the stubborn ones, some punches and kicks would easily solve the problem, and as long as he didn't do anything extreme, the cops couldn't do anything to him. But what he didn't expect was meeting the demon Jiang Chen again. Lu Hu's face looked like he just ate a piece of sh*t. Jiang Chen ignored him and looked at the person behind him, who got up and said, "Boss, why can't you collect debt nicely? What's the point of being so angry and starting a conflict?" The man wearing a pair of sunglasses looked over when he heard the words and guffawed. "Are you involving yourself in something that's none of your concern?" "None of my concern? Isn't that the job of an employer?" Jiang Chen surprisingly shrugged, his face betraying not the slightest hint of fear. The one called Sir Chong burst out laughing, then slowly took off his shades. The thugs saw their boss was about to make a move, so they maliciously surrounded Jiang Chen. "You son of a b***tch. Who do you think you are?" "Boss Jiang, this is my business, so you don't have to stand up for me." Zhang Hongjie smiled bitterly while trying to persuade Jiang Chen. He did not expect that his former good friend would make use of a debt collection agency to make him pay back the money he owed. He probably thought he would run away, since one of their friends, whom they also had drunk with regularly, ran away after being deep in debt after losing big in the stock market. "Sir Chong, you can't touch this person." Lu Hu rushed forward to stop his brother, but Li Chong didn't care at all. Debt collection was all about the aggression. What's the point in collecting debt if they would just get scared? They should have just studied law instead. "Can't touch him? Li Qiang. Although I don't know who you are, I won't tolerate you cursing my mother." Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed and fastly becoming enraged. "Funny, Daddy didn't even curse. I'm going to *k you up." Li Chong's eyebrows shot up provocatively and he became even more aggressive. The man in front of him didn't look like he could fight. However, before he could even complete his words, his eyes began to blur as he flew into the closet. Kong Jia covered Jie's tiny head to prevent her from witnessing this violent scene. Zhang Hongjie looked dumbly at his boss. He could not imagine his boss, who was not even taller than him, had the ability to send someone flying with a kick. When the thugs saw that their boss was beaten, they hesitated for a moment before lunging at Jiang Chen with their fists out. Jiang Chen let out a sigh, his eyes suddenly turned fierce, and then he stretched out his hands. Lu Hu, on the other hand, didn't make a move. He smiled wryly and closed his eyes. He had experienced firsthand how vicious he could get. The fight ended almost instantly with the previously mocking hooligans splayed awkwardly on the ground. What a joke. With muscle strength plus 30, even a boxing champion wouldn't be his opponent. With reflex plus 32, even if they sprouted 2 more hands, it would yield the same result. Jiang Chen shook his fist and looked at Lu Hu, who was standing on the side, with a sardonic smile. "You don't need to do anything, I'll do it myself." Lu Hu smiled bitterly before raising his fist ready to knock himself out. "Don't be nervous. Do I look that vicious to you? Just hold still, and everything will be okay," Jiang Chen smilingly told him. "Is there even a point of watching?" Of course, Lu Hu would not dare to say it out loud. His raised hand was frozen in midair, and he had a peculiar expression on his face. "I thought you were collecting debts for Hongyi Gang. What, the pay is too low, so you started your own business?" Jiang Chen watched Lu Hu thoughtfully, and a hint of mockery laced his tone. Zhang Hongjie and Kong Jia were utterly stunned. Jia was flapping her hands in her mother's arms, wanting to get a good look at her surrounding. Lu Hu glanced at his brothers on the floor and sighed. "Got fired." Lu Hu explained everything that happened after that night, including the things he knew and the thing he shouldn't have known but heard. When he heard the gold store manager, Lu Anshan, had leaked his information and the Hongyi Gang leader, Lu Changlong, was ready to make a move on him, Jiang Chen cursed in his mind. Although he was not afraid of these scums of society, what happened here made him reflect on the carelessness of his past actions. Selling gold attracted unwanted attentions of a different kind. He was lucky that his improvement skyrocketed that made Lu Changlong backed off right away, or else he would be facing far more treachery and danger. "Alright, you may now excuse yourself." Jiang Chen didn't want to waste too much time on a cannon fodder. Upon hearing those words, Lu Hu immediately left, leaving his comrades on the floor without a second thought. Zhang Hongjie saw that Lu Hu had left. He glanced at the thugs on the floor and asked Jiang Chen with a troubled tone, "Mr. Jiang, how do we take care of this?" Jiang Chen watched the people lying on the ground and scratched his head in annoyance. 3 of them probably had their ribs broken and 2 of them definitely had their hands fractured. Li Chang was knocked out with just 1 kick. Because he didn't fight that often, he didn't know how to control his power. Jiang Chen secretly activated fury, and when he saw that no one had died, he secretly let out a sigh of relief. He took out the phone from his pocket and called 110. Hello, 110? I want to report a crime. This is what happened. Better blame it on them first. After explaining the situation, Jiang Chen hesitated for a bit before calling Wang Zhiyong's number. Hello, Brother Chen, what's up? Wang Zhiyong's brash voice came through from the other side of the phone. Just a bit of trouble. Some punks were giving me trouble, so I injured all of them. Jiang Chen cut straight to the point. The last time they had a drink, they started calling each other brother. So in the moment of trouble, the only one Jiang Chen could think of was him. Fu *K, who dares to touch my brother? Where are you? I'll bring my people to beat their asses. Wang Zhiyong cursed and was instantly incensed. Jiang Chen was speechless at his words. This guy didn't even inquire about the injuries but was already ready to give them a beating once again. Ahem, I already beat them down, but I have to go to the police station to give my statement. Do you have some connections with the police? Whoa, you beat all of them? Don't worry about the evidence, it's self-defense. Although I am not close to the police, I am tight with their superiors. Wang Zhiyong chortled. I hit them first. Don't worry, if I said it's self-defense, it's self-defense. You only need to say that during the investigation. Damn. Political influence sure is a great thing.